sooner?
Big head shake, yes.
Good. Good.
Are you tired of writing your dissertation yet?
I got to get back on it.
I just got back the AETR stuff today, so.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, we got some revision stuff, but it's like easy, simple stuff.
I wonder if Dr. Hagerman submitted it for us.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if she got it back today.
I was kind of getting nervous. I was like, I haven't heard nothing.
Well, I was just thinking about that the other day with ours because we submitted 2.
Oof.
It's I don't recommend that.
Not on these special publications.
Yeah,
I'm shooting. I say but there's a couple of us on all of them, but I'm shooting for all 4 in 1 year. So
yeah,
we have our AJAE one going into review this week or next week. So if we can get that one in, that'll be all 4 AETR, all those ones.
Fingers crossed. I've got one going into AJAE soon for review.
There you go. You need to take all those. I've learned.
I'm trying.
Seth, my grad student, he's been working on some stuff, and I think I'm gonna be cursed. Now I'll compare everybody to him, and he's gonna be 1 out of 1 million.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting. We're gonna have probably 3 publications out of him by the time he even does his proposal defense. It's crazy.
It should be, right?
I'll never have one like that, I don't think.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the monthly Master Beef webinar series. Hard to believe we're already in April, but here we are. And we're going to go ahead and get started here in a second. We've got 2 people speaking tonight. One of them is Tori Marshall, one of the farm area managed specialists. And she's going to go ahead and kick us off. And then after that, we're going to have Charley Martinez from Ag and Resource Economics to follow up. So if you have any questions throughout, please put those in the Q&A box or in the chat, and we will moderate those as they come in or at the end when we have time for questions. So with that, Tori, I'll let you go ahead and share and get ready to go.
All righty. Let's see. All right. Can y'all see that screen?
Looks good.
All right. Perfect. So I'm kicking us off tonight. As she said, I'm Tori Marshall. I'm Farm Management Area Specialist out in West Tennessee, and I work with University of Tennessee Extension and the Manage program, and I'll get a little bit more into that later on. But my goal for tonight is to kind of talk about several different things, a culmination of items, and hopefully by the end of it, you kind of see where we're going when we talk about these things. And a lot of times on master beef programs, we hit really hard on the production side, but kind of what I want to focus on tonight, and I think Charley's going to focus on some too, is the financial aspect of cow-calf operations or stocker operations. And so kind of what I want to start us off with just real quick is thinking about record keeping. And we've got to make sure, typically when we think about record keeping, most farms, we keep good production records. We're keeping track of those calving rates, breeding rates. We keep track of what's going on in our operation as far as the production side goes, but sometimes we forget about the importance of keeping records on the financial side. And we need to make sure that we're keeping track of our financial capacity for our farm in order for us to be able to make informed business decisions. And by having those accurate financial records, we're able to create budgets, financial statements, and ultimately, we're really able to see where our money is going. And so that's kind of where we're headed tonight. We want to talk about financial statements and their importance. Then we also want to talk about budgets. And then I also want to throw in here at the end of this, because this is something that we can help with in the Manage program that we'll talk about later, is decision aid tools. So those are the 3 areas that we're going to kind of talk about tonight by the end of this. And if you have any questions by the end of it, feel free to ask. We're not going to try to make sure that you know every single equation that goes into these analysis or things like that. But all this is simply to do is to help inform you and make you think about some things that maybe you don't necessarily keep track of yet, or that if you do, it brushes you up on those skills and reminds you of things, make sure of things that we're keeping records of. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is financial statements. And so, as I said, we typically keep pretty good production records on our operations. Financial side is what we also have to think about keeping records of as well in order to measure our financial performance. We know the production performance of our operation, but it's really important to make sure that we understand how our farm's performing financially. For one really key reason is we can't manage what we don't measure. And so I'll put this into the production aspect. When we get ready to cull cattle out of our operation, typically we've got some records that we can go and look at to make an informed decision for our farm. We know what the calving rate is for these cows. We know which ones that we want to cull from our herd, and we're able to make that informed production decision based on the records we have. And it's the same thing with the financial side. It's hard for us to make informed business decisions when we're not measuring on the financial aspects. And so that's why I like to use this as the purpose of these statements. It's an indicator of our financial health. And so I like to use analogies and metaphors and things when I talk about this, or really in anything in general. And I like to compare this to our physical health. So typically at some point in our lives, we'll go and get a physical. And when we go to get that physical, they may draw blood or they'll run certain tests on us to see how we're doing physically. And then when we get those results back or those numbers back, the doctor will tell us certain areas that we need to improve on in our life, or help us go, okay, something's got to change. Maybe, for instance, we get results back and we have high cholesterol. He may tell us to cut back on our egg consumption if that's something that we eat a lot of eggs and have in our daily diet. He helps inform us of areas to improve and guide us so we can improve our physical health. The same thing goes for financial statements. They help serve as that indicator of our financial health and help us guide to how we need to improve our financial health of our farm. The other purposes for these statements as well is they really allow us to look at individual decision processes. And I always like, when I've done some of these in-person meetings, I always like to ask the question, who has unlimited time on their farms? And I always make the joke of, if you've got unlimited time, I want to sit down with you and make sure and find out what your key to all this is, unlimited time is, because I sure don't have it. But with that being said, is that by having these financial statements, we're able to look at different enterprises on our operation and eliminate those that are not maximizing our profit on the farm, or they're less profitable than other aspects of our farm. And so that's one key benefit of making sure that we're keeping records on our farm and we're utilizing financial statements. Other purposes to have these is it helps us look at the decision of whether or not to take on a new investment, whether that's machinery or land. And if that is going to be a risky loan for us and our farm, can we undertake that? Do we have the loan capacity to be able to take on that additional investment? And so there's several different financial statements that we can look at on our farm and on our, regardless of whether we're cow-calf, backgrounding, whatever we may, what cattle production we may be in. But the one that I want to look at tonight, we're just going to look at one, and that is the balance sheet. And so what the balance sheet does is it gives us our indicator of our financial health at one specific point in time. And so we could do one today and complete a balance sheet today, and it would tell us one thing. And then if we've made some investments or sold some items, we may be able to have a completely different balance sheet the next day. But it gives us the indicator of our financial health at one specific time. And what the balance sheet does is it tracks three things for us. It tracks our assets, which is anything with economic value to it. So when we think about what I've got here is just a screenshot, Dr. Chris Boyer up in the UT department, Ag Econ, he created just this simple balance sheet to look at as an example. And we see here we have current assets. And what that is those are anything that we could sell quickly or within a year and it not change the trajectory of our operation, it not halt our production on the farm. And this could be calves that we're planning on marketing. This could be supplies on hand. I had a gentleman one time talk to me about fencing supplies. He had not put it into the ground yet, but he had all of the supplies ready for. That was counted as a current asset. It was something that had economic value to him. Non-current assets, those are things that are going to kind of stop the typical operations of our business. For instance, if we sold breeding livestock, if we sold all of our mama cows and our bulls, that's going to kind of halt our cow-calf operation right in its tracks if we sell that type of asset. Same goes for tractors on our farm, or if we sell our land. Those are things that are going to kind of halt business on our farm at the time. So those are the assets that we have, anything that has economic value to it. What we also have is liabilities, anything that we owe money on the farm. What do we owe? Whether that's a operating loan, whether that may be a loan on our breeding livestock, machinery, land, these type of things is liabilities. They're debt that we owe. And when we take our assets and subtract liabilities from that, we get our net worth. And that tells us what portion that we actually own of all of our assets. And so what a balance sheet does is it helps us measure two things. When we put all of this information in, and with a balance sheet, this can really be as simple or as intricate if you want to. I was working with a producer one time, and he just simply made the offhand comment, asked if he could include the comforters that his wife bought. They were extremely expensive, and he just made the joke that could he include those? And we laughed and said, well, yes, you can if you want to, because that has an economic value to it. But these balance sheets can be as detailed or as simple as you want to make them. But the goal of them is to make sure that we're measuring two things from them, and that's our solvency and our liquidity. And so what that is solvency. That's our long run ability to meet financial commitments. And so what that means is if we took everything on our farm today and we sold everything, could we pay off all debt on our operation? What is our net worth for our farm? Could we pay off everything that we owe on our farm if we sold all of our assets today? So that's our long run ability to meet those financial commitments. Our short run is our liquidity. And this is how quick can I get my hands on cash? So if there's a bump in the road, if something happens, how quickly can I get my hands on that cash in order to cope with that unexpected financial need so it doesn't stop or hinder our operation from operating successfully? I grew up on a cow-calf operation, and I think back to times that there may have been times that unexpected things happen, and do as I say, not as I do in some aspects, but sometimes things would happen and calves would be sold, not when they were intended to be, but things happen and had to cope with unexpected financial needs, and those were sold in order to be able to get our hands on money quickly. So that's our liquidity. That's the short run ability to meet financial commitments coming up unexpectedly. And so when creating this, I thought about initially putting in these certain ratios to measure and stuff, but to me, they didn't seem of a benefit tonight. What I really wanted to do is, what can a balance sheet really tell me? Once I put all of that information in, what does it tell me as a cattle producer? And so I started thinking about questions that we might have as producers. And one of the first ones was, if I paid off all debt due this year, how much in current assets do I have left? Well, we can find that out from our balance sheet. That's our working capital. The larger this number is, the better off our farm is. If we can pay off everything and still have a certain amount of capital left over, that's really good for our farm. Another one is, what percent of my farm is owed to creditors? I know sometimes we think that we don't really want to know the answer to that, but it's extremely beneficial to us when we're thinking about taking on new investments? Or is this loan going to be risky if we already owe this amount to creditors? What happens to us if we take on this risky loan? And that's our debt to asset ratio. And we want to try to keep that at a certain percentage. And the other question is, what's proportion of my current assets to my liabilities? So where do I stand on that? How much assets do I have compared to the liabilities on my operation? And that's a current ratio. All of these questions and more can be answered with a balance sheet, things that we've probably thought about at some point or another, but we may not have the actual answer to. But by keeping records on our farm and having these financial statements, we're able to ask these questions to see where we stand at a certain point in time on our farm. And so with that being said, the balance sheet gives us an indicator of our financial health at a specific point in time. What budgets can do for us is to see where we stand coming up in the future, to expect to see what our projections are for the upcoming year. I know that this has been a big year with input prices the way that they are. A lot of people are wanting to think about, what am I going to be spending on this year, whether they're row crop producers, cattle producers, if they're looking at putting fertilizer, whether it's on crops or whether it's on hay and forage pastures, those type of things. Those are big questions this year to see where we're going. And so with budgets, when I talk about this, is that the University of Tennessee every year creates budgets, the Ag Econ department, and these are some of the ones that we have that accounts for specific costs of production. We have field crop budgets, livestock budgets, forage. Typically, all of these are updated annually, field crop and livestock most certainly. Other ones are updated intermittently. But we have these along with other land grant universities. But one thing that I do like to show about these is we could go through all of these. If we were all together, we could sit down tonight and each one of us fill out our own individual budget. And I could almost guarantee that nobody in the room would come out with the same numbers. And one reason for that is because these are specific to your operation. You know what you're spending on your farm. I heard a specialist one time, he was talking about the budgets, and he said, I can absolutely guarantee you the numbers in here are more than likely not correct because they're not your numbers. And so what we like to do, the Department of Ag Econ, farm management specialists, we like to point out that with these budgets, you're able to change these numbers. So these color-coded lines right here, we call them orange, yellow, however you see that color may be. These are areas that you can change specific to your operation. So for instance, the calving rate, we have in there for an average Tennessee producer, there's a 90% calving rate. If your calving rate is 92, 95%, change that. You're more than welcome to change that. We want that to fit your herd and your operation. If it's 85%, change it to that. It doesn't have to be better for you to change it, but change it to what accurately reflects your farm. The same goes for herd size. Not all of us have the same herd size. That needs to be specific to your farm. And what I like to point out with this is that when we're looking at these budgets, we know that there's a lot that goes into cattle operations, herd data, supplemental feed, pasture and hay, vet and medicine, repro. All of these categories, all of these tabs in our Excel spreadsheets, most counties have paper copies if that is something you are interested in for using for your farm. All of these you can put in your specific numbers for your operation. And as I said, I don't like to get too nitty gritty into the details of the budgets because they're very specific to you, and what you see up here may not be what fits your farm. So I don't really get into the nitty gritty of talking about, hay production is 0.9 acres, the quantity that one cow will consume. I really don't like to get into that because it's going to be very specific to your farm. But what I like to point out is that you can manipulate these and work on these to fit what accurately reflects your farm. And so I like to point out that we just don't leave you out there wondering how in the world we got these numbers. This is also available to you online at that link that was previously shown. These are all assumptions. So for instance, pasture, fertilizer application, 60-30-30, that was what it looked at right there. These are things that can help you realize if maybe you change things differently and look at these. This all can fit what matches your farm. And so once we get these numbers, once we get this financial statement, once we get that budget, once we get that balance sheet and those budgets, then what? What does all of this really matter for us as producers? Where do we go with all this? So I like to point this out. This is an example. So with the managed program, farm management specialists across the state, we are able to use what is called FinPack. This is a software that we have on our computers, and we can put in your balance sheet for that specific time, what you're projected to spend in the upcoming year, and we're able to create this projection for the next year for you to see what your net farm income with expected prices, where this stands. This is a row crop one. This is just purely an example to see. And what I really like to point out with this is right now, there's a lot of uncertainty going on in our world. Financial shocks. I really think that's important for us to look at to see where our cash deficit and our cash surplus stand. And that's at the bottom of the screen here. We're looking at that. What happens if we see a 5% decrease in prices? What happens if we see a 3% increase in interest rates? All of these are possible right now in the current environment we're in. And that's why I think it's truly beneficial for us to be able to utilize all of these aspects for our farms to see where we're going for the upcoming year. And so this is a question I had at one of the first in-person meetings that I was giving at one point, and this was a question that a producer came to me, and he said, I have an off-farm job. Does any of this really apply to me? And the short answer is yes, it really does, because let me point out two different scenarios to you. One of them is on the aspect of record keeping, why just keeping records is important. But the first example that I kind of want to give is what happens when the property right beside your farm goes up for sale? What happens when it goes to auction? Are we in a state, do we know what we're spending on our farm? Do we know where we stand to try to potentially purchase that instead of seeing it go up with subdivisions? That's going to hinder our operation and the sustainability of our farm given that time. That's one thing. That's one reason to think about those new investments, the probability of being able to take on those investments and those loans, having these financial statements, knowing what we're spending on our farm, if we're capable of taking on something like this, even with an off-farm job. Are we able to take on that possibility to prevent something from happening to that land that's for sale that butts up right to ours? The other one is an actual scenario. There was a gentleman he was a cattle producer, and he went at the end of the year to get his end of the year summary at the co-op on his feed bill. He thought that he was spending somewhere around $8,000 on feed. Turns out when he got his end of the year bill, he was spending around $18,000. And so that's another reason why, even though we have an off-farm job, sometimes that kind of hinders our perspective of what we're actually spending on the farm and what's actually going on. Sometimes we don't want to know what we're spending on our farm. It's more of just continue to be able to pay it off and work towards that. But it's always good to have those financial records to make sure we know truly what's going on our farm at any given time. So the last thing that I want to talk about is decision aid tools. And so with this, again, we had our financial statements, or had our balance sheet, we had our budgets, but what else can we use to help improve opportunities on our farm? And these aren't necessarily considered all financial, but they're still good opportunities for us to be able to utilize things that the University of Tennessee, as well as other land grant universities, put out for us to utilize as producers. So the first one that I want to talk about is, it's a very important time to consider this and to think about this, is the fertilizer cost calculator. All of these are put out, they're under the Department of Ag Econ website for us to share with producers. And what this does, it helps you consider the cost of applicating various levels of fertilizer and other products on your farm. And when I first did this presentation, it was back in the fall, may have been right before the fall, and took a screenshot of this. This was the calculator from the Excel spreadsheet. And at the time, urea was $4.40 a ton. Now, the last time that I checked, it may have gone up, it may have gone down some since the last time I checked. It was right around $9.05 a ton. So I kind of think that shows us why it's important to think about our cost per acre for fertilizer. And we can change these numbers, all of those, the numbers that you see in blue or bold, those are ones that we can manipulate for our farm and our application rates that we want to do. The other one is buy-sell margins for backgrounding stocker operations. So what this does is it really lets us look at those buy-sell margins for the period that we select if this is the type of operation we have. And it allows us to kind of evaluate that price risk exposure on these purchased cattle and when we plan on selling them and their weights. And it gives us this worst, average, and max margin. So we see here for this scenario, we saw that in order to even make any type of profit, we would have to have that maximum margin over the past 10 years based on these specifics for this farm. The other one that I really like and that had a lot of questions about is this beef cow herd efficiency. So we really want to try to improve the herd efficiency of our farms and make sure that we're keeping cattle that are efficient for us and improving the genetics on our farm to continually have good calves that are marketable. And so what I like about this one thing is you can input the same data as any of the other Excel spreadsheets. But what I like about this is that you can clearly see which ones are efficiently reproducing, being efficient on your farm based on the color coding that we have on this. You don't have to go through and think about, okay, which ones do I want to think about culling? Which ones do I want to keep? It kind of lets you know immediately where your herd is standing and which cows on the farm are being most efficient. And then the last one, I think this is important right now, the hay cost calculator. If you look at a lot of maps at this time, we are some of the last few states that are not in a current drought at the time. And I think this is if you've got hay right now, you're in a very good position, or you're looking at having hay, you're in a good position. If you're not, it could be an expensive year. And I think it's very important that we evaluate the impact of our storage and feeding methods of hay, given the increased cost of our hay at this point. And something else I like about this tool is it allows you to compare different hay or forage samples on your farm or whatever hay you may be purchasing. So I could continue talking all night. This whole entire lesson could be about decision aid tools, but that's not what I'm trying to get at right now. What I want to show, and the point of this was kind of like the balance sheets and the budgets, is just to kind of inform you and let you know what's out there for you. And the UT Ag Econ department, they have various different decision aid tools that you can utilize on your farm, and other land grant universities have decision aid tools as well. We try not to reinvent the wheel when we're thinking about what's out there. So if we don't always have it, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Another university may have it, and I know that any of us would be more than willing to help look for that and see. And if it's not out there, that may be something that as a department we can help create to make sure that you as a producer have it, if it's something that can be beneficial to you. And if it's beneficial to you, it more than likely is beneficial to other producers as well. So the last thing is who can help. And this is what I said, I wanted to get into this. This is our UT Manage program. And at the time, this is how the farm management specialists are spread out. So I am out in the Western region and cover a little bit. We're currently down 2 managed specialists, but we are looking to hire them. And our goal is to help with that farm financial planning assistance. We can help you with the balance sheets. We can help you with the budgets, decision aid tools, our goal is to make sure that you have the county agents wherever you may live helping you on the production side, and that we can also help on the farm financial side. That's our goal, is to be able to assist you in all aspects through extension and through the managed program. And so that is all I have at the time. Katie, let's see if we have any questions here.
Awesome. That was great, Tori. Thank you for sharing all that. It's always good to remind people of resources that we have available and just make sure that they know who can help them whenever they have a question. So really appreciate that. I don't see any questions right now, but folks, if you have questions for Tori, go ahead and put those in the chat. And whenever Charley is finished, we can make sure that we get to those. With that, I'll go ahead and let you start, Charley.
Can y'all see that? I'm assuming y'all can. All right, well, thank you, Katie. Tori, I really always, we always talk to producers and talk about the decision aid tools that we have, and I think you did a great job. And to the folks that are listening, I think I'll also want to reiterate, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And that's what we're trying to help folks do. And as we start moving towards an environment and the economy that has a lot more inflation, input costs are rising, interest rates are going to be rising. I think this is one of the most crucial times. Get ahead of the curve and stay ahead when it comes to these increased costs, and what does that mean for the bottom line? Because at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to help y'all with: is be profitable, manage your costs, manage your returns, and hopefully at the end of the day, we increase your net profit. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit and focus on a certain topic. Tori's presentation covered a lot of the broad spectrum of farm and financial management. I'm going to cover something that is kind of near and dear to my heart in terms of feeder calf and the price determinants associated with the feeder calves in Tennessee. And I'll introduce myself real quick. My name is Charley Martinez. I'm the farm and financial management specialist with UT Extension. All that means is my goal is to lower your cost, increase your revenue, and at the end of the day, increase your profit. That's my goal for when I work with producers, because at the end of the day, that's what makes y'all sustainable and viable in the ag economy. So as I get through this, we're going to start covering certain things, and I'll give you a little bit of a rundown. I'm going to talk about it's going to be about 80% of the study that you're seeing there. It's going to be coming off of a paper that myself, Dr. Chris Boyer, who's a colleague in the Ag Econ department, and Dr. Kenny Burdine, who's the livestock economist at the University of Kentucky. We did a paper together called The Price Determinants for Feeder Calves or Feeder Cattle in Tennessee. And it's coming off of that journal article. But in the meantime, we've since gotten more data since, I guess, this time last year. And because we got more data, it calls for more inclusion in terms of, hey, we need to clean off the data, put it into the model, rerun the model. And I want to give a quick shout out to the 3 people that are listed there outside of the co-authors from the journal article: Seth Ingram, who's my grad student, and Haley Ferguson and Ben Mayfield. They're my undergrad research assistants. When we got the data, I guess basically almost a month and a half ago, all of 2021, Haley and Ben are the ones that cleaned it all off and put it all into Excel form for us to use. And so I always want to give them a quick shout out, because that's not a fun job, but it's a needed job, and I really appreciate their help. But from there, we're going to get through the motivation of this study. We'll get into the background of the study. We'll talk about some of the results, and then, of course, the most important part, the implications, and at the end, if there's any questions. So this is going to be, again, more geared towards certain factors that affect the feeder calf sector. So if you have stockers or feeders, this applies to you. If you're a cow-calf producer, this applies to you in terms of whenever you're marketing those calves. So we're not going to talk too much about balance sheets or anything from that nature, but we're going to talk about, at the end of the day, your bottom line and the price determinants associated with whenever you're marketing your feeder calves. And all that's going to revolve around this one simple equation. This is the only equation I'm going to show to y'all. I'm going to be a bad economist and not show a lot of equations. But when you're marketing feeder cattle, keep in mind when we talk about this, we're talking about the net returns, which is a function of the price that you sell your calves at whatever given weight, minus the cost that it took to get those calves to that weight. And so when I'm saying that, I want to keep in mind that I'm talking about marketing feeder cattle, because there's some differences between marketing and selling. And I'm gonna get into that here in a minute, but keep in mind as I go through this conversation and through this presentation, keep in mind the marketing segment of this, of what we're talking about. When I say there's a difference between selling and marketing, that I'm gonna lay it out explicitly in terms of what I mean by that. When I'm selling, we can sell quality or the grade, whatever is the easiest to produce. So we can sell the quality of the calf, or just we can sell whatever we got and get rid of it. And we sell that at the most convenient time or the most convenient place or whatever, and we take whatever price is offered. And when I say that, think about it, and I'm just as guilty as anyone else. Back home in Texas, we have a sale that occurs on Saturday morning. It starts at Saturday on 11 a.m. Saturday morning. We never take our calves on Saturday, but what we do prior to that is try to get these calves set up to where when we take them in on Friday, because that's the most convenient time for us, we take them in and try to set it up to say, okay, we're just going to sell these calves at this time. And we're going to take whatever happens. When I say that, it's more logically knowing that we've done our homework on that sale, and we're saying, okay, we know that we're going to give up the convenience factor. So we're going to sacrifice a little bit on price just because we're not going to get up on a Saturday morning, but we're still marketing our calves because we've done homework up to that point. When I say marketing, I'm talking about that we're going to sell quality and the grade of those calves to be the most profitable. We're going to sell at a profitable time. And so we're also going to sell at a profitable place. And then when we do that, it gives us some control over price, which thereafter is going to help us control somewhat for profit. And so when I said that we're going to give up, in my own personal example, we give up selling calves on, we give up the convenience of selling on Saturday morning at 11 a.m., but yet we do make sure that we have cash rated calves, or if we got females, then we're going to make sure they're all uniform. We're going to bring them together to that one place, and we're going to sell them at a certain time that we feel the market is the most advantageous or the most profitable for us. And then that allows us to try to estimate what's going to happen. And the difference is that one is convenience motivated. So if we're just selling, we're not really worried about marketing. It's all convenience motivated. But if you're marketing, you're profit motivated. You're trying to do things that are going to add value to your calves. You're trying to do things that are going to give you more of a bump on the bottom line. And so from that difference, there's two distinct differences between selling and marketing calves. And so when I bring up that equation, we're going to think about being profit motivated. We're trying to think of things that can allow us as producers to have some type of advantage when we're marketing those feeder calves, regardless of weight, whether they're 600 pounds or over. We're trying to think of ways, when we sell, what brings us the most money at that time. And so that's rooted on the fact of what is the demand for these stalker and feeder calves here in Tennessee. So stalkers are the calves that are over 600 pounds. They're under 600 pounds. They're going to go somewhere that's going to a stalker program. Tori mentioned that we're one of the few states left with grass. We're probably going to have a lot of stalker calves in our state this year because we actually have grass this late spring and throughout the summer a little bit. We're going to bring in calves that are under 600 pounds. The demand for those types, what they want to do is bring in these calves. They want to put on cheap weight or put on weight. Some do it with grass. Some do it with grass and supplemental feed. Either way, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to put on cheap gain or cheap weight. We see a lot of that in Tennessee in the wheat areas. Tori is getting her PhD at Oklahoma State. That's a big wheat area. The Panhandle of Texas is a big wheat area. Right now, with wheat prices, they probably pulled them off mid-February. They actually probably pulled those calves off because of the wheat prices, and we're trying to get some wheat, but now they're in drought, so that's a whole nother conundrum. But here in Tennessee, those ones that are under 600 pounds that are going to probably stay here around Tennessee, they're going to be known as stalkers. The feeders or those yearling calves are going to be the ones that are over 600 pounds. And so they'll come in and say someone sells a calf that's 600 pounds or less, they're going to be a stalker, or they can be a backgrounding type feeder calf. Once they get over 600 pounds or over even more than that, they're going to go on to be feeder calves, and those feeder calves leave our state or leave those wheat areas, and they go on to be in the feed yards for farmer feeders in the Midwest, or they go to custom feed yards that are in the Western Plains and the Southern Plains. And believe it or not, Tennessee, we are one of the states, one of the few states in the country that we have an abundance of feeder calves, but not a lot of feed yards. So for us, we send a lot of those calves out of here in the Southeast, to those feed yards. And so for us, then that opens the question of, okay, if we have stockers and feeders here in Tennessee, what are those price determinants that help, gain more profit or have a chance at more profit? Well, when we start thinking about that, we got to think about the marketing and production alternatives. Here in Tennessee, if you're a stalker, or if you're a cow-calf producer, or if you're a backgrounder, there's different options. Some folks could market those calves at weaning. So they just, take them to the sell barn whenever they're weaned and they're done with them. Some market calves after preconditioning. So some type of phase between weaning and selling, there's a preconditioning phase. If anybody's ever heard of the VAC 45 or the VAC 60 program, value-added calf 45 or value-added conditioning program of 60 days, that's that type of program. Whenever you hear preconditioning, they can do that program and then sell the calves then. People also can market calves following the backgrounding program, so the heavier weight. So once they are stalkers or backgrounders, they can then, if you remember back, I said 600 pounds, it could even be more than that. But once they get to a higher weight, then they can market it then. And so all three of these phases we do see here in Tennessee. We have people that sell at weaning, we have people that sell after a preconditioning program, and then we have some folks that sell after they've done the stalking feeder phase or the backgrounding phase. And so then if we think about, we've talked about what is the equation that is behind the scenes. We've talked about what is some of the determinants. Well, explicitly, how do we measure, or what are the factors that go into this? And so what you're seeing here is a kind of a diagram. I'm going to be the first to say I stole this. I stole this from Dr. Emmett Rawls because why reinvent the wheel, as Tori said earlier. I saw this in a slideshow that he did from 2007. And I actually stole that and just kind of re-imprinted it into my program. But price is a function of those 5 gold buckets that you see. So genetic characteristics, management characteristics, marketing characteristics, the market conditions, and external factors. And underneath, I won't go through all of them, of the black boxes that are under them, but you can see there's multiple different things that influence each of those gold boxes. But what I want to highlight is that from a genetic characteristics, steer versus heifer, the color of those calves, the weight of the calves, the health of the calves, the lot size, the uniformity, time of sale, and then if we just for sake of talking about it, these market conditions and external factors, these are always fluctuating and have ups and downs and ebbs and flows, but if anybody's paid attention to recent news, the Russia-Ukraine conflict has caused a lot of issues. The input prices have caused a lot of issues in our market. And right now, weather is causing a big issue on the external force for these feeder calves, especially as we think about where Montana and the Dakotas are. They're going on almost 2.5 years worth of drought. In Texas, back home where I'm from, we're just now starting to take on drought. We've had hay stocked up for a while, but as the drought is continuing and these fires are continuing across Texas, that's going to cause a lot of impact on price, not only for the Southern Plains, but also for us here in the Southeast. So just kind of keep that in mind as to what drives feeder calf prices. It's going to be a factor of demand, and then the marketing type, if you're selling versus marketing those calves. And at the end of the day, the net returns are going to be dependent upon all these factors. And so for me, when I first got here, I started in January 1 of 2020. I started thinking of stuff from the feeder calf side saying, okay, what can we do to help our producers think about profitability? And so at the end of the day, it's saying, okay, so what? What does all this matter? Some of y'all might think, well, you're not telling me something I don't know, but what does that mean? Well, as I bring this stuff back up, there's a lot of these aspects that I've talked about. We have a lot of, most of our herd's going to be about 96% black hide here in Tennessee. A lot of us are doing these types of management characteristics that affect our price. There are certain sales that affect our marketing characteristics in terms of lot size, this uniformity, And then these external factors are all influencing what's happening. And so the motivation behind all this is that we know that the previous slide is showing what affects the feeder calf price. But historically, there has not been a lot of studies that looked at that price in terms of from a Tennessee lens. So there's been a lot of studies done using Superior Livestock Auction data, which this is coming from the Colorado area. They have sales in Texas, Oklahoma, Colorado, Missouri, Kansas, all in that area. And that's taking nothing away from that auction. It's a really good auction, one of the largest in the country. But that sale uses a lot of that data and comes up with what price determinants are for cattle or for feeder calves across the country. And within that data, they look at things such as muscle score, so 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. There's been a lot of studies done on being uniform and black hide. There's been a lot of stuff occurring because of source and verification. There's also been stuff now recently talking about different programs such as the Certified Natural Plus, which means, these calves are being fed on certain things that then qualify for these value-added programs. But all in all, none of that has ever covered Tennessee. And so for me, it was an opportunity to say, okay, let's see what we can do to help our Tennessee producers and say, okay, we understand here in Tennessee that in the Southeast that these things do affect us. But what is the value of that to us? What is the price? What is the premium? What is the discount? And that was the motivation behind all of this study that I'm going to show you. And so what you're looking at here are some pictures that came actually almost a year ago. It would have been Good Friday of last year. Kevin Ferguson, who is also one of our area specialists or farm management specialists, he had given me the 2021 February sale result from the Lower Middle Tennessee Cattle Association video board sale. And I got it and I was like, man, this is really good. Can you get me more? He said, well, yeah, we can get you more. And so he vanished for about a month and a half. And then I was in the mountains on Good Friday. I got a bunch of phone calls, didn't get them, of course, because I'm in the mountains and there's no signal. And when I come down, I had all these pictures. I had a bunch of missed calls. I had a bunch of texts saying, call me. And I call him and he said, hey, I found 2011 to 2020 data. Do you want it? And I said, yeah, I'll take it all. But they actually had to go to a storage facility to go find these catalogs that were wrapped up in these bins here. And so I want to give a quick shout out also to Kevin Ferguson and Richard Brown with UPI, who actually went out and got all these paper documents here. And this is how I actually physically got them. And so then I had to sit there at my kitchen table or counter there. I took it over for a weekend and I inputted all this data into Excel. My wife wasn't happy because I just basically took over the whole thing, but I guess all in the name of research. Whoa, there you go. So then I'm going to give you a little bit more about this sale. It's a monthly sale that's held in Columbia, Tennessee, where this Gold Star is. We get a lot of people from Tennessee, of course, but also Northern Alabama and Western North Carolina. Every month, this sale has a catalog that comes out a week prior to the sale. And inside of it includes a lot of things. As you saw, we did have data from 2011 to 2020, but for our study, we only used 2015 to 2020 because if everybody remembers back to 2013, 2014, if you were selling cattle then, we could wean off a 350-pound calf straight off the mom, take it to the sale barn and get $1,000. Prices were really good and profit was out the roof. And we did not want to include that data because it would just skew and kind of bias our data. So we kind of cut all that off. And I'll show you here in a little bit what those prices look like from 2015 to 2020. But we did, have all that data from 2015 to 2020. And the goal of this sale is to try to get to the 50,000 pound or truck load lot size. So think about 50,000 pounds load lots. Inside each catalog, it has lot descriptions, and each lot has a description including information on the owner, the number of head, the estimated weight, the range of the weight, the feeder calf scores, any physical or management description, and weighing conditions such as shrink and all that. For the most part, shrink and slide were always the same. So it was kind of null and void for us on that standpoint. From that standpoint, from the description standpoint, as we dive deeper, there is percentage of home raised. So it could be 50, 75, or 100% home raised, any breed description, percentage of black hide, or physical defects such as bad eyes or pink eye scars, horns, or scurs. And most importantly, also for us in this study was if they were PI tested, persistently infected. With that's a very critical BRVD test that says, hey, these cattle are healthy, or these cattle, if someone does test positive, that's a bad deal, because then it can spread throughout a lot size. So for us, we are also interested in seeing if cattle were PI tested or not. So that left us with 3 objectives. We wanted to evaluate the premiums associated with lot size, or with the lots of feeder cattle in terms of home raised lots, if they were majority home raised, if they were majority black hided, and if they were PI tested. We also wanted to look at the corn price dynamics and the feeder calf weight relationship over time. As I mentioned earlier, there's been a lot of studies done on feeder calf price determinants. But over time, the corn price has never been as fluctuation or variable, has never fluctuated or has been as variable as it has been the last couple of years. So that offered us an opportunity to say, okay, hey, we're going to sprinkle in the price, the corn price, and then we're also going to see what happens to the price over time. And then we also wanted to examine the lot size implications. As we are a Southeast state that is home to a lot of feeder calves, and we sell a lot of feeder calves here in Tennessee and also in the Southeast, we want to see the lot size implications for our producers here in Tennessee and in the region. So from the get-go, I want to acknowledge that the feeder calf grades, 99.99% of all of them were all grades or large ones. So they were going to be large frame. They're going to be a muscle score of 1, so they're moderately thick or greater. And so we actually had pretty uniform cattle across the board. And so we're not going to be talking about anything that has to do we're not going to talk about anything that has to do with mediums or smalls, or even muscle scores 2, 3s, and 4s. And so we're talking about quote unquote front end cattle, really good, solid base cattle, regardless of hide color, but just really good size, really good thick feeder calves. And so we're going to jump straight into the results. What you're looking at here is some summary statistics of the sale across time. The price on average was $1.42 a pound, or $1.4278 per hundredweight across the time frame. On average, we're talking about these 820-pound calves. 52% of those lots were home raised or were deemed home raised. 10% of the lots were PI tested. Almost roughly 40% of these calves or these lots were implanted lots. 97% of the calves marketed through the sale during that time frame were majority black hide. We had a question here during the sale was, okay, if we market these calves in, let's say, March of 2022, but they don't get picked up until May of 2022, is there a problem there? Is there a premium or discount? So that's what we deemed delayed weight. So anything that was 10 days past the sale date, was there a premium or discount? 67% or almost 70% of the lots sold here were steers or steer load lots. And the corn futures price during this time frame on average was $3.66. But as I mentioned earlier, we did have a wide range and variability during the study. So we had a range of $3.19 all the way up to $4.35 a bushel in the corn futures. And so we had a lot happening there in that corn future side. If you remember, the last object, or the second objective that I mentioned there, was we wanted to see the impact of PI testing. There's only been 10% of these lots that were PI tested over the range of 2015 to 2020. But over time, on each yearly average of PI tested lots has increased. So in 2015, I think it was like 2 to 3%, and each year it increased. And so in 2020, it was roughly 20% of the lots sold in 2020 were PI tested, but on the average throughout time, it was only 10%. So each year has increased, and there was very few in 2015, but now that's increased a lot throughout time. If we look at the feeder calf price here, which is the blue line, you can see here in 2015, we're still coming off that high of the 2013, 2014 time, and then we kind of level out here for feeder calf sale price, the average sale price in the sale. And then the red is what you see here. The red line, what you see here, is the average corn price, and we get some price swings in there. Kind of get into 2019, we get some volatility happening with massive swing from March of 2019, we raise up and then drop all the way down to June of 2020, and then we pick back up. So we started seeing a lot of volatility during that time frame. And then as we sprinkle in 2021 here in a little bit, I'll show you even more volatility. Some makeup of the lots. If you remember, I mentioned lot size. 8% of the lots that were sold had 20,000 pounds or less in each lot. 8% of the lots sold had 20,001 pounds all the way to 30,000 pounds. And then 6% that were sold were 30,001 pounds to the 40,000 pound range. And then we had quite a bit that were 40,001 pounds all the way up to 50,000 pounds. Almost half of the lots sold were actually 50,000 pounds, or were between 40,001 to 50,000. I do want to note that if, some people have said, okay, what about 45,000 pounds to 50,000 pounds? Roughly 47% of the lots sold were from 45,000 pounds up to 50,000 pounds. So, for our study, we just left it in 10,000 pound increments. But then there was also some that were over 50,000 pounds. 29% of those were over 50,000 pounds. But for tonight, I don't expect there's too many people that are watching that can crank out that many calves. So we're not going to really touch that group. But I just want to acknowledge that there were some out there that did sell over 50,001 pounds. And so as we jump into the premiums and the discounts, I want to acknowledge or let y'all know that green means good, red means bad. So from a home raise perspective, if the calves that were being home raised, majority home raised, there was actually a $2 premium per hundredweight for those calves. If we think about PI testing, and you remember I said there was only 10% of those calves that were sold, or 10% of the lots that were sold that were PI tested, it still yielded a $1.19 premium per hundredweight for PI tested cattle. So even though we had a very small percentage, there was still a premium associated with that test. Implants. Oftentimes people say, well, you need to implant these calves and get them going and you'll get your premium. We didn't find a premium associated with implanted lots, but that's not to say, and we can't prove this, but I'm going to go ahead and make an assumption on this, that if you do implant these calves, you're going to gain a premium in the weight gained between, the weaning weight. Whenever you market it, you are going to get a bump in weight, but there's no discount or premium associated with implants because of, if you remember back to the weight associated with these calves, on average, they were 820 pounds. I spent 2 summers with Cargill cattle feeders in Bovina, Texas. It was about a 60,000 head capacity yard. Whenever calves that were over 800 pounds came to the yard, we did not care if they were implanted or not, because they were going to be on their own protocol or their own program, and they were going to get another implant of a certain sort. So it did not matter. And so I think it's more essential that there's no discount associated with being implanted or lots being implanted, because we do know that you're going to gain some premium in terms of total weight being sold because of the implant, but there's no premium or discount associated with that. Majority black hide, we said that 97% were black hide. There was a $2.63 premium per hundredweight during that time. Delayed weight, there was no discount or premium associated with delayed weight. I think that goes to the fact that we are a feeder calf state, and if we have buyers here, they're looking for feeder calves, and they're trying to lock up buys. And if the buyers come in, they're looking for supply. Once they get it, they really don't care when it's going to get delivered, because they're trying to do some type of risk management. The first thing you're going to see there is corn futures. For every $1 increase in the corn futures, initially we found a $15.19 discount. And at first we were like, that don't make no sense. No one's ever seen that before. And if you remember back to one of the objectives was to look at corn price, or what's known as the corn slide over different weights. We said, yep, we need to do the weights. And so we actually divided by 100 pound increments. And I'll show you that here in a minute, but we actually find a 3 cent per hundredweight, 3 pennies per hundredweight premium for different weight classes. And I'll visually show you all that here in a minute. And then of course, steer load lots, they almost garnered a $17 per hundredweight premium. And what I want to highlight here is that if you were to sell a steer load lot that was majority black hide, that was home raised and PI tested, you're looking at well over almost $22 per hundredweight in premiums simply because of your management characteristics. If you remember back to that slide that I mentioned of the management characteristics and if they were castrated or not, the environment and all that stuff, if you were to simply do good management techniques, you're looking at over $21 in premium, almost $22 in premium, but because of your good management techniques. But then if we say, okay, hey, what about that corn price slide? What you're looking at here is 500 pounds, which is the blue line up here, all in 100-pound increments, all the way down to this orange line, which is 1,000 pounds. And as the corn price, which is down here from 320 all the way to 535, here's the slide that you would see as corn price increases from $1.1220 for these 1,000-pounders, or almost $1.17 for these 900-pounders, all the way up here to almost $1.40 for the orange and a little over $1.40 for the blue. And so what that indicates to us is that here in the Southeast, as we have a lot of feeder calves, as that corn price goes up, there's a demand switch for these calves. If we think about it, if we have a high priced corn, and if you're a feeder and you're coming out here to grab calves, the best thing you can do is not feed out cattle on that high priced corn for a long period of time. So how do they accomplish that? They're going to go buy heavier weighted calves because it's cheaper for them to go and spend money on the front end and buy heavier weighted calves, feed them on the high price corn for a short period of time. Then they finish them off and sell them to the packer. And so it flips the demand here. As corn price goes up, we actually find a premium for our calves here in Tennessee. And so it's simply nothing more than a reason because of that feed to finish ratio or that feed to finish time. As that corn price goes up, these heavier weighted calves are going to be sought after more. That the demand switches for those heavier weighted calves. And what I also want to highlight here is in this 500-pound range, this line is actually decreasing. So as corn price goes up, those 500 or those lightweight calves actually have a decrease in price because the demand switches for those heavier weight ones, and there's going to be less demand for those lightweight ones. And so if demand goes down, price is going to go down. They don't want to feed out these calves or these lightweight calves on this high price corn. Someone else like a backgrounder or a stalker is going to come searching for these calves because they can get them at a cheaper price. And so it's saying, okay, Charlie, that's cool, but did that happen in 2021? Because if anybody's paid attention to corn prices throughout 2020 and 2021 and on through right now, prices kept shooting up. And so I sprinkle in the corn price and the corn data or the 2021 data, and I want to highlight real quick that there was that the home raised variable went down to $1.92, which essentially was almost $2 previously. PI tested dropped down to 85 cents from the $1.19. Majority black hide actually increased to $3.47, which was up from the $2.63 that we saw. And steers were actually $12.19, and that was $4 down compared to the previous time frame, which was $16.88. But if you still add all this up, and we went through a pandemic during this time, and we're still coming off the heels of the pandemic, there's still a lot of premium out there associated with still really good management techniques. You're looking at roughly $17, $18 in premium still because of good management techniques. Of course, that's down $4, but from the study time frame, but that's still really good money as we go through this business and its tight margins. Still doing really good practices or practicing really good management practices still does pay. But if we start thinking about the corn and the price associated with stuff, the blue box, what you see here, was in our time frame. So the original study was from 2015 to 2020, and this blue box was in that time frame. The red box was not in our time frame. But I have this up here because look at corn price as it started shooting up. We peaked almost this little over seven something. I think it was 725 at that time in May of 2021, and it's still come down, but it's still higher than what our previous study was. And I want to highlight that as we still see this price increase, but even in the sale barn or the weekly average Tennessee price, as the corn price went up, look at our average weight of our heavyweight steers. These 7 to 8 weights still continue to increase. We had a decreased drop here for these 5 to 6 weights, and then it picked back up a little bit. We did have another dip down. But if you were to put a trend line, the trend line is pretty steep for the 7 to 8 weights compared to the lighter weights. So even outside of this video board sale that was a value added type sale, as corn price went up, we still did see a decrease for these lightweight calves and an increase for these heavyweight calves. But then I want to say, okay, as we got into that high corn price environment, the corn price is here in this black line, this black dotted line, and the feeder calves that were 5 to 6 weights is this green line, and the feeder calves that were 7 to 8 weights are in this red line. As this corn price stayed high and maintained its pretty high prices, the heavyweight calves still closed the gap between still close the gap on those 5 to 6 weights. So if you take the difference between this green and this red line over time, it still closes together and it gets closer together as this corn price is staying high. So we did still see that play out in the Tennessee sale barns and the average Tennessee price as corn price was still up and maintaining high prices. The gap between those 8 weights and those 5 weights continued to collapse or continue to shrink over time during that time frame. So to me, I think that our study, when we found that as corn price goes up, the demand for these heavyweights and the price of these heavyweights increase, I think it's still there, regardless if you're selling in the video board sale or if you're selling in the sale barn. Regardless, I think that's still a pattern that we'll see. Throughout the time frame, if you remember, I said that a time of year does impact your price, and also the sex of the lot impacts price. What you're looking at here is during the time of our study, the difference between steer and heifer price, and steers is the blue bar, heifers are the red bar. The difference was always the lowest in the first 2 quarters, roughly the first 2 quarters. And then as we get ready for what's known as the fall run in August, we find our biggest difference in steer and heifer prices, and then it kind of comes back down throughout the fall, levels back out, and it comes back down here in January. That's what happened in our study. Well, if we sprinkle in the 2021 data, we still see the same thing. The first 2 quarters of the year was our lowest or our smallest difference between steers and heifers. And then it ramped up for the fall run and came back down again a little bit smoother. But if you're selling or buying heifers during this time frame, your biggest difference that occurs throughout the years in those first 2 quarters, regardless of the study time frame. And so I just want to highlight that if you're selling steers, your biggest premium happens at the beginning of the fall run. But if you're buying or selling heifers, the smallest difference occurs in the first 2 quarters of the year. If you think about it, it does match up. Some folks might be in here trying to buy some heifer calves that are close, to 800, 900 pounds. They're ready to be bred. And so there might be some increased demand there for those females so that they can try to get them bred during that time frame and buy them as replacements, not necessarily as feeder calves. And then as we get into our last objective, which was lot size, what you're looking at here is for each of those weight classes that I mentioned earlier, which was 20,000 pounds, all the way up for one class, and then we have 20,001 to 30,000 and so on. This is the average price, everything else held constant. So we hold everything constant, black-eyed, sex of the lot, time of the year, the month, everything is held constant. This is just analyzing strictly on lot size. The ones in yellow are statistically lower than the other non-highlighted prices. And I do air quotes because in reality, I can say that $1.3630 is statistically higher than $1.36, but in reality, we're talking about 30 cents a hundredweight. And so in reality, that's not much of a difference. I mean, is it mathematically a difference? Yes, but in reality, that's not really a difference in my book. But what I want to highlight here, though, is from $1.36 all the way up to once you cross this 40,001 pound threshold, there is a massive jump of $3.80 strictly by lot size. Once you reach that threshold, so $3.80. So if you remember back when I first listed all the premiums, there was roughly $22 in premiums. But if you're also sprinkling this lot size, we're talking about almost $25, $26 per hundredweight premium for good management and marketing practices. And so there is premiums out there if you do put in the time and put in good marketing strategies, not selling strategies, but marketing strategies. There is a payment there for y'all. So what does that mean though? I mean, I can say it means $3.80 per hundredweight, but let's put it into practice. And let's say that I know that Greg Upchurch is out there watching somewhere with his folks, and let's say he has 750-pound calves, but he only has 35,000 pounds, which equates to 47,000 or 47 head out there of uniform feeder calves. Or we can say maybe he has 60 head of 750-pound calves, which is 45,000 pounds. So we have 13 head difference and the 10,000 pound difference whenever he's going to market, and we can see what happens. So let's say Greg is selling that 45,000 pound lot, and he receives that $3.80 per hundredweight premium relative if he was selling the 35,000 pounds or 47 head of cattle in that lot. What does that equate to? That equates to almost $30 per head premium just because he reaches across that 40,000 pound threshold relative if he was to only sell that 35,000 pounds. So if Greg was sitting there saying, hey, I know I'm only going to have 47 head, he might call me up and say, hey, you got 13 other head out there that I can complement my load, because guess what? If we both get there, we're going to make some money together. And so just because you might not have a full load lot, this offers the opportunity to say, hey, maybe Greg Upchurch, Tori Marshall, Katie Mason, and Charley Martinez all get together. We put all our calves together. We only have 20 apiece, but if we put them together and we get over the 50,000 or the 40,000 pound threshold, we can all make money together just simply by marketing together, as long as, you know, we have good uniform cattle. And so I would highlight that there. You don't have to have, you know, the 40,000 or pound cattle by yourself. You and someone else, a couple of 1, 2 producers or 3 producers or 4 producers can get together. As long as your cattle are uniform, you can put them together and go make money together simply by being over a certain threshold. And so did this hold true in 2021? So there's a $3.80 premium. That was the difference between this bar and this bar. In 2021, this was the premium, $2.22. So even in 2021, with high corn prices and everything going chaotic, there was still a premium there associated with meeting the weight range. And so the implications for y'all that are listening, at the end of the day, there's return on value for producers that are raising a majority, home raising majority black hide. We found those premiums. But if you think about those, the second objective, which was the PI testing, and there was a $1.19 per hundredweight premium, what does that mean? Well, usually, depending where you are, it's going to be between $4 and $8 per head. I know some folks you can send them to through the Tennessee lab, and it's actually free, but it takes a little bit of time. But so if if we think about from $4 to $8 per head per test, and if you think about from like a SNAP test, you're still looking at a $10 per head premium just because you're guaranteeing your healthy cattle. But there's also an implicit value of guaranteeing your cattle are healthy. And what I mean by that is, say that we were to sell our cattle through a sale, and I have PI tested my lot, and I know everybody's healthy. And I send them out to the Southern Plains, and they get commingled with another group at the feed yard. And that pen, after they've been commingled, there's been a lot dying. And if the feed yard calls me and say, hey, you had PI tested cattle, right? I can say, yeah, I'm technically protected. I have I'm not open to any risk there. But what if my cattle weren't PI tested? There's no way of knowing if my cattle were the ones that caused the wreck or not. And guess what? The feed yard's going to start coming back to you and say, hey, we need to start making another deal because your cattle are causing X, Y, and Z, this wreck, or they're part of the wreck. And I have no way of guaranteeing that they're right or wrong. And so PI testing also has another implicit benefit of that. You're guaranteeing healthy cattle. All that combined, lot size, home raised, majority black, and it's sprinkling this PI testing, that suggests that buyers are coming out here to the Southeast where there's a lot of feeder calves, and they're placing a lot of value on cattle that are sourced from the same location and are healthy. Keep in mind, I said from the same location. Imagine if we were all put together and we had a split load lot together, but we all PI tested. I don't think you're going to lose too much of a premium. You're still guaranteeing healthy cattle. And then also when corn prices are high, keep in mind here in the Southeast that demand increases for those heavier weighted cattle, all things held equal. I say that because we're in a time where we still have grass out here, and it still might be more beneficial to keep these lightweight calves on grass and make a premium in August and September, or late July, because there's going to be a demand for those, because corn price is going to stay a little higher up, especially with all the stuff happening across in overseas, and the fertilizer prices that Tori's mentioned, and all these other inputs that are increasing. That's going to cause corn price to increase a little bit more. That might offer an opportunity for us to capitalize on that simply from a management marketing strategy. Moving forward with all this stuff, we're actually going to maintain this data moving forward until either I retire or they get rid of me here. I'm going to start maintaining this data set along with other data sets here in Tennessee, and start kind of keeping a baseline for y'all as producers. We're also going to start investigating more on heifer and management investigation in terms of the number of rounds of shots, the type of shots, the type of the additive, feed additives, so like rumensin, stuff of that nature, those type of programs. And then this sale is actually going to have a new value-added conditioning program, of a 60-day program, and we're going to start looking at implications of that. Is it worth it or not worth it moving forward? And we're going to use that also to look at from a fall versus spring calving herd and stuff all sprinkled in between there. And so this has been one of the most helpful data sets that we got here in Tennessee from that perspective. But really looking forward to seeing what's going to happen in the future with this data. One last thing I want to mention, in the Wisconsin, Minnesota area, they have a thing called was it Doc Daily, Ag Doc Daily or whatever. It's a daily blog that occurs from their ag economists in the land grant system. And so here in the South, if you think about the SEC region, or think about the SEC conference, and you sprinkle in Virginia and Oklahoma, we decided we were going to do our own daily blurbs. And so this is a QR code. You can simply take a picture and it'll take you to a link where you just got to put your name and your email. It's free. And every day we'll have an email that you'll receive an email in your email box that is a daily blurb or blog that covers all types of topics related to agriculture. So whenever the Ukraine and Russia stuff hit, Dr. Aaron Smith in our department wrote a post about what does that mean for row croppers. There's also Farm Management Wednesdays. There's livestock questions. There's ag law questions. Any type of specialty crop, it's covered in there. And so this is just it's meant for you to just drink your coffee and read it and be done with it for the day. It comes in the morning. So I'll come back to that. But if there's any questions, I'll answer them now. If you're on Twitter, that's my Twitter handle, but I'll leave this up there as if there's any questions or not.
All right, great. Thank you, Charlie, for sharing that information. I always think it's neat to see those premiums and how they break down, and good information for everybody to take home with them tonight. So does anybody have any questions for either Charlie or for Tori?
Means we did a good job, Tori.
That's right. Quiet group tonight. I'll give them just another minute or two to see if anybody types in a question, but otherwise, I don't even think I introduced myself at the beginning. Most of you know me by now. My name is Katie Mason. I'm an extension beef specialist here at UT, and I'm here tonight because Courtney had another obligation, but we've had some transitions, and I will be helping with the rest of the virtual Master Beef programming this year. So you'll start to see me a little bit more often as well on these webinars. And I'm not seeing any questions come in. So with that, thank you all for joining us. These will be recorded, I believe. I'm not sure if Courtney has a survey set up, but I do believe that you can access the recording after this. And if you have any questions, make sure you reach out to us, myself, or Courtney Carter for now, and we will get those handled. So with that, I hope everybody has a great night. Thank you again, Charlie and Tori, for joining us. And we will see you all next time.